Hi there. Most home health nurses think their documentation problems come from one thing, not knowing what to write. But that's not exactly the problem, because even experienced nurses, even great clinicians, they still get documentation flagged, denied, or unclear. So the real issue isn't effort, it's not even knowledge, it's something deeper that almost no one ever teaches you in nursing school or even in orientation. And once you see it, everything about documentation starts to make more sense. In most nursing environments, documentation is taught like this. You do the visit, you write what happened, and you move on. That works in the hospital, but home health is quite different. Because home health, your documentation isn't just a record of care, it's a justification of why care was medically necessary in the first place. So what happens in this? The nurse documents tasks, patient was assessed, wound care performed, patient educated, but Medicare isn't looking for tasks, they're looking for reasoning. They want to understand, why is this patient homebound? Why does this require skilled nursing? What is changing over time? And what is the clinical risk if this care stops? And when that reasoning isn't clear, well, the documentation fails. Not because the care was wrong, but because the thinking behind it was incomplete. Well, here's a shift. So here's the real problem. Most nurses are trained to document what they did, but not training to document how they're thinking. That gap is what causes confusion. The gap is what leads to denials, and that gap is exactly what we're going to fix. This channel is built around something called clinical thinking system. It's a simple way to structure how you think during a home health visit so your documentation naturally becomes clearer, more specific, and aligned with Medicare requirements. Instead of guessing what to write after the visit, you'll learn how to think correctly during the visit itself. Because when your thinking is structured, your documentation becomes structured automatically. The clinical thinking system starts with just one shift. You're not documenting tasks, you're documenting clinical reasoning. So instead of asking, what did I do today? You start asking, what is actually happening with this patient? Why does it matter clinically? What risk does this create? And what needs skilled intervention? What is changing over time? That is the difference between a note that gets accepted and a note that gets questioned. Let's make this real. Instead of writing patient seen for congestive heart failure, no acute distress noted, education provided. That tells us very little. But clinical thinking sounds like this. Patient reports increased shortness of breath with minimal activity, requiring frequent rest breaks when ambulating short distances. Lower extremity edema has increased compared to the previous visit, and patient requires ongoing skilled monitoring due to risk of fluid overload or potential hospitalization. Education provided on daily weights, of sodium restriction, with patient able to verbalize understanding when to report weight gain. Now what changed? Well, it wasn't the patient, it was the thinking behind the documentation. So a quick recap. So when nurses struggle with documentation, it's usually not a writing problem, it's more of a thinking problem. Because if the clinical reasoning is unclear in your mind, it will also be unclear on the page. In the next video, I'm going to show you what Medicare actually looks for when they review documentation, and why even good care can still be denied if the structure is missing. If you want help building this step by step, I put together a simple guide called the Clinical Thinking System, and it shows you how to structure your thinking during a real home health visit so your documentation becomes clear and more consistent immediately. You can download it from the description below. Well, I hope this has been a help to you. Consider subscribing if you like the content, and look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a good day.